How's it going, everybody? Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. I've never made a video like this before, but I'm really excited to do this because today we're going to be going over every major transit of 2022. This is not going to, I'm not going to talk anything about the zodiac signs or how this is going to be affecting your sign. We're simply just going to be going through the major transits of each month, and I'm going to go into them pretty in depth. But what I want to do with this is kind of guide you through the year, show you where the ups are, show you where the downs are. So if you're someone like me and you're wanting to, plan certain life events, or you want to know when to be emotionally prepared for something or when to celebrate and, really take heed of all the good things that are going on, you have a better idea of that. Now, I am going to be making individual videos for each zodiac sign for forecasting for 2022. So you'll know how everything is going to be affecting your zodiac sign. And I'm going to have those videos once they're up, either linked in the description or a part of a playlist or in the comments or maybe somewhere up here. I don't know yet. So just be on the lookout for that. But this video is, I'm making this video for you guys to be able to reference back to this. So, when you watch, for example, I'm a Leo. If you watch your Leo 2022 horoscope, you can come back to this video and know exactly what these transits are going to look like a little bit more specifically. So I don't have to repeat myself 12 times when I make every single, zodiac video. Anyway, I'm not going to make too many big mundane predictions. I might, say a few things here and there. I might kind of give you an idea of how things are going to look. Yeah, but the major thing I'm really trying to get through this video is just showing you what transits are going to happen so you can kind of gauge and get an idea of what the year is going to have in store, regardless of what your zodiac sign is. And so you can just be better prepared. So, you can celebrate the good times. And then, you can, if there's, when the bad times do come, you're much more prepared for that. And you're aware that it's coming, right? However, if you want to know what each little month's going to be like as we get there, join me on Patreon. I do monthly horoscopes for each zodiac sign that not only helps support my channel, but you get access to monthly horoscopes and bunch of ad-free content as well as early release stuff too. Like my patrons are going to be getting this video way earlier than you guys are here on YouTube. But also, if you are wondering what the year is going to look like for you specifically, book a reading with me. I do year ahead readings. I do solar return consultations. Really the best way to really know how the year is going to look for you is by getting a professional astrology reading. So if that's something you're interested in, check out my website. I'd love to talk to you about your birth chart and kind of prep you with what the year has ahead for you. So this is going to be a pretty long video. I have no idea how long it's actually going to be. I'm kind of just sitting down here and we're just going to kind of go through it. But I have here a list of the major transits that I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about every single little thing, like every little full moon or every little new moon or every little Mercury retrograde, but I'm going to talk about the big things that will really define every single month. And we're going to start with January of 2022. Now I'm going to pull up the chart here. And so for a lot of people, this might be a lot to kind of look at when it comes to like the whole birth chart and everything, but I'm going to try to guide you through this as best as I can. 2022, we really start off really interestingly because I'm going to fast forward. As you can kind of see, this is January 1st, 2022. To understand how we're going to start January off, we need to understand how December ends. So let me just back up a few days here. I want to bring to your attention right here on December 19th, we're going to have Venus station retrograde on top of Pluto. That is a really, really big transit. It's going to be a really big deal. And it's funny because it happens at the very end of 2022. So it kind of, we get off to a really weird foot starting the year off because we end 2021 in a very weird way. As well, a few days after that I think it's December 30th, here on December 29th. Also, as you notice, Jupiter will enter Pisces again. Now, that's how we start January off, and I want to start off with Jupiter being in Pisces. Now, Jupiter is going to transit the whole sign of Pisces throughout 2022, and we're going to keep talking about that as time goes on. But what I want you guys to think about is what was going on for you around May of 2021 till about the end of June into July of 2021. Jupiter ingressed into Pisces for just a little bit, and that gave us kind of a sneak peek of what 2022 is going to be like. A lot of astrologers talked about this transit, and what you saw here in America, and I know this is very different for each country, but here in America, mask mandates got lifted when Jupiter entered Pisces, and then mask mandates came back when Jupiter left Pisces. So where I really see that, at the very minimum, because while we could talk about the mask mandate all day long, as we start January, Jupiter going into Pisces is going to give us some type of relaxing feeling. Just because Jupiter is all about, Jupiter is really all about abundance, faith, optimism. Jupiter is also about integration and bringing things together. Jupiter is going to be entering its home sign. Jupiter loves Pisces, and it works the best here. Just like maybe you might not feel comfortable going to the bathroom at a stranger's house, you feel more comfortable going to the bathroom at your house. Jupiter likes to be, and all planets like to be in their own sign, and they can operate and do their job much, much better when they are in their own sign. What is Jupiter's job? Optimism, hope, belief, faith, abundance, greater things, right? Now, Jupiter's going to start entering Pisces. Jupiter's going to enter Pisces at the end of the year, which is going to give us some type of, at the minimum, relaxed feeling. And I'm about to counteract everything I say right now. So just kind of bear with me when I talk about this, because we're going to be really untangling a big mess here. But Jupiter's going to enter Pisces. Look at where Pisces is at in your chart. That is where you're going to see much more optimism, much more expansion. Jupiter rules expansion. Jupiter rules integration. So, of course, look where Pisces is at. That's where Jupiter is going to be bringing you things. But Venus is going to be retrograde on top of Pluto. And here in America, this is going to be a pretty big deal. Whether that's, I think you're going to see tons and tons of riots, and I think you're also going to see some type of economic devastation at some point. And I know that's very doomsday, but this is a pretty big deal. And I'm not sure because this is a weird year, how this is all going to come about. I'm not exactly sure yet. And in this video, I don't really want to focus on that. But what I want to say here is that there's these two stories going on here at the beginning of 2022. Jupiter's entering Pisces, where there is this new positive thing happening, but Venus rules pleasure. Venus rules value. And what do we enjoy? What do we value, right? Venus is going to retrograde, where during a retrograde, Venus is going to show us maybe our values change a little bit, or what we like or what we understand is different, right? In Capricorn, Capricorn's ruled by Saturn. So when you get Capricorn stuff, you're talking about the rules, regulations, systems, and the way that I've been really explaining this Venus retrograde, which, by the way, I have a video. Well, by the time this is getting posted, I'm going to have a Venus retrograde video out, and I'm going to go over how it's going to affect your zodiac sign. I'll have that either in the description or linked up here or there or whatever it's at. You'll find it. But if you want to know how the Venus retrograde is going to affect you, be sure to watch that video. Now, the Venus retrograde in Capricorn is a change to the rules of the game, right? Venus loves games, and in Capricorn, you can't have fun in a game without some rules, right? There has to be some established guidelines. But Venus is going to station retrograde on Pluto, where Pluto rules corruption. Pluto rules, the underworld. Most people kind of know about the Hades mythology. So I'll let your imagination kind of work with that, understanding what that's going to be. But what you're going to see is this Venus retrograde over Pluto. There's going to be a lot of fear. There's going to be a lot of change in how we operate. The reason why I brought up, that this is a change to the game rules of the game. If you're playing Monopoly all day long, right? We've all played Monopoly. And someone is playing by a different set of rules than you're doing, you're going to feel like, okay, then I can't play this game the right way. What changes in your life if there are no rules, right? And that's not to say, I'm speaking analogously. That is not how you say it. I know that I sound really dumb right now, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Anyway, Venus is going to retrograde over Pluto here, and we're going to come back to this throughout the next few months. So just keep that in mind. But we start January on a really weird foot. What we like, what we value is changing. Pluto rules fear. Pluto rules anxiety. So Venus stationary on Pluto, December's going to be a really hard month, and we go into January in a really weird sense. And as we move by week, I'm going to pretty much go week by week here for the most part. But what I want to also get to is in January, Mercury is also going to station retrograde. And then when we get to the end of January, Mercury is also going to go on top of Pluto, and there will be a Mercury retrograde on top of Pluto. So we have Venus retrograding on top of Pluto, Mercury retrograding on top of Pluto. So those Pluto themes are really coming up in big, big ways. So, a good example of how Pluto works is when Pluto entered Capricorn in 2007, can you guess what happened? That's right. The housing market crashed. Pluto entered Capricorn, and since 2008, you've just seen the monetary system and geopolitics just have these crazy, changes to it. And I think the Venus retrograde and the Mercury retrograde on top of Pluto is going to be bringing up a lot of these themes. This is also America's Pluto return too. So here in America, it's going to get really, really crazy. And you're going to see that story start in December, and it's going to work its way all the way through March. And we're going to walk through that. But what I want to also say is by the end of January, Mercury is also going to be retrograding on top of Pluto. So there's this double whammy effect of Pluto stuff. And like at the very minimum, we're going to be tripping. We're going to be freaking out about some stuff, whether that's a good thing, like we should be freaking out, or maybe we're just making up, stories in our head. That's, going to be kind of up in the air and for every individual to kind of, go through themselves. But with Jupiter entering Pisces at the same time, there is it's a really weird balance of like things being good and things like also dramatically changing in ways that maybe we never thought before. Which leads us into February. Now, the two big things in January are Jupiter's going to be in Pisces and the Venus retrograde. But the big thing I want to talk about February is Mercury will station direct, and Mercury will station direct pretty much on top of Pluto and then move over Pluto again. But what I want to direct your attention to is this. Notice that Venus and Mars are conjoining each other. Now, if you watch my weekly horoscopes that I post here every Sunday, you know that I just don't stop talking about this Venus-Mars conjunction. Let me break that down. Venus and Mars conjoin all the time, right? They're planets. But what's super special about this is Venus will station retrograde on Pluto, move backwards, and Mars will be right there. And Venus and Mars are going to be at about the same degree for about a month, which is pretty astronomically significant. That's pretty rare to see. And I think that's going to tell quite an interesting story as we move forward. And let's just get to Mercury will go over Pluto, but really it's February 12th where the month begins. Venus will be on top of Mars by the degree for a whole month. Now, Venus rules value and enjoyment, right? And all those, and pleasure. And Venus will station direct in Capricorn, where this is like, okay, the rules have changed. Our ideas have shifted. I know I'm jumping backwards here for a minute, but if you want to know what this Venus retrograde is going to be like for you, and this is something I'm going to talk about in my Venus retrograde video, is Venus stations retrograde in the same sign every 8 years. Venus has retrograded in Capricorn before. It hasn't been on top of Pluto, nor has it made this conjunction with Mars the way that it's had in this sign. But the last time we had Venus retrograde in Capricorn was December of 2013 and January and February of 2014. So you can think back to that time and, ask yourself, what were you going through? Venus rules relationships. So this might have even been a relationship thing. Venus rules values and pleasure. So there's a lot of things that could have changed for you, but just think about that time as well. For some of my older clients that were, or some of my older viewers that were around during this time or that were, functioning adults. I was a child at this moment, but December of 2005 and January and February of 2006. That was the first time Venus retrograded in Capricorn. So you can think back to that time too, and you can see the parallels and how these cycles, because we all know life is cyclical, we could see how those are going to match up. So if you want to know what this Venus retrograde is going to be like for you, think of those two, times in your life. But what I want to come back to is Venus is going to conjoin Mars. And again, this happens all the time. This is not a rare event, but it's a rare event for them to be so close to each other for so long. Mars is all about action, drive, energy, fights, conflicts, inflammation, separation, war, anger, right? And Venus is value and pleasure. And again, Venus isn't always like nice and petite, Venus rules, values. And a lot of people will take a lot of intense actions for the things that they want. And what you're going to see here is, well, for one, Mars is also exalted in Capricorn. Mars loves to be in Capricorn. Mars is a workhorse in Capricorn. And you have Venus and Mars conjoining each other. And I want you to pay attention to the date right here. And I want you to watch the date and watch Venus and Mars and how much they stay together. So as we go through February, and this is the big thing with February. Look, they're still on top of each other. We get to the literally end of February. They're still on top of each other by the degree. And so this whole month of February is going to be really brought together by Venus now. Venus will station direct and move forward over where it went shadow, right? So Whatever what was going on in December and January, you're going to come right back to with the Venus retrograde. But now with Mars is in the game, this is energizing the topic. This is really bringing things to a powerful, close. And that really leads me to, February is the Venus-Mars conjunction. Venus and Mars, they do a dance all the time. It always looks different with each one, but Venus is like fun. Mars is like, I'm taking action on this. Venus is like, I'm trying to enjoy this, but Mars, it's really frustrating at the same time. It's a lot of feelings all together, but Mars and Venus in Capricorn, that's a lot of, systemic structural change. That's a lot of energy and a lot of focus on systemic structural topics, whether that's politically or in your actual personal life. Like, look at where Capricorn rules in your chart. For example, I'm a Sagittarius rising, so Capricorn rules my second house of money. And I already know what's going to happen for me during this Venus retrograde. I'm going to have some money issues kind of come up. And, when Venus stations direct and Mars and Venus, I'm probably going to be doing much more, bigger things with my money, bigger things. I think I'm going to have a really big purchase actually come up during this time because I think I'm going to be moving during this time. But that's just my personal life. Anyway, what this leads me to, though, is March 2nd. So we actually get to March because really February is just like Venus is stationing retrograde, Mercury stationing retrograde, and then Venus and Mars will be conjoining. But then we get to March 2nd. Now look how much is happening on March 2nd. Venus will leave shadow, still be on top of Mars. That hasn't stopped. And it's still going to continue too. We're not even done with the Mars-Venus conjunction. But Venus and Mars will conjoin Pluto. This is also coinciding with America's Pluto return. So if this is whatever starts at the end of November, because Venus enters shadow in November of 2021, and then Venus is all messed up throughout December, and then Venus stations retrograde at the end of December. We don't wrap that up until March 2nd. And if you're one of my followers for a long time, I've been talking a lot about this day. Because this is when everything, it's a 5-month transit of Venus in Capricorn. Venus usually only lasts 5 weeks, I think, in a sign is like her average. But Venus is going to be in Capricorn for 5 months. That's not typical of Venus. And then Venus leaves shadow, still on top of Mars. And then they both conjoin Pluto. And by the way, for the astro nerds, this is actually the day of America's Pluto return. Like, this is the moment of it. So you're probably going to see some type of huge financial structural changes in America. You're probably going to see, and look, Mercury is also on top of Saturn. Mercury is a microphone usually, and Saturn is authority. So we're probably going to be hearing some news. And this is a new moon in Pisces on top of Jupiter. That's a little hard to read along with all this. I'm like, okay, this looks horrible. This looks great, but this looks horrible. So bringing the two together so far out right now, because I'm recording this actually in August, if you can believe that, because you're probably watching this way later on. But there's a new moon in Pisces, which, that's a new beginning, right? Kind of resetting the energy where the energy is much lower. And it's on top of Jupiter where there's kind of room for expansion. But things really change. And this is how we start March off. And March is going to be really painted by this color at first. Mars and Venus on top of Pluto. You got to think for yourself here. Of course, you got to know what Mars and Venus rule in your chart, so you know what actually topics that you should be thinking of. But of course, this is bringing up Capricorn stuff. This is bringing up the Aquarius stuff. And what you're going to see here is Mars and Venus on top of Pluto is like dramatic change. Like that's taking things too far. That's going extreme on stuff. And Mercury is also on top of Saturn. So there's this very sober like realization. Mars and Venus on top of Pluto is like also too. Fireworks, for example, or fire. For example, my dad was a firefighter, so he taught me a lot about fire safety. And, it's super funny. Like, for example, the gender reveal party in 2020 in Southern California that set everything on fire. Like, if you're in Southern California, you should know basic fire safety and not be dumb. But this is one of those things is it's all fun and games until you set a forest fire that kills like 11 people, right? This is, and at the very minimum here, Mars and Venus on top of Pluto is going to be freaking, like, this is not going to be an easy winter. There's going to be a lot of stress. There's going to be a lot of anxiety. We'll get past that. There are better days ahead, but this is like the bottom of it. This is when things are really changing. Maybe Capricorn rules your 10th house of your career. And, for example, let's say there's like an economic fall or whatever, and you work for some big, Fortune 500 company or whatever. There might be some, hiccups with that. There might be some problems with that. Maybe you don't get fired or lose your job, but you might be really afraid of that. And I think at the very minimum, what's important here is that nothing bad might actually happen, but you might just be freaking yourself out, because that's what Pluto likes to do. Is Pluto likes to antagonize, and Pluto loves to bring fear and anxiety. And so it's going to be really important to start March off as clear-headed as possible and not freaking out. And so what also defines March is Mars and Venus, still conjoining, both ingress into Aquarius together, which brings me to this. We got a little bit of a lot of planets are going to be in Aquarius here. Let me move the midheaven real quick. A lot of planets are going to be in Aquarius in March. Aquarius rules, like societies. Saturn rules Aquarius. Saturn's the greater malefic, boundaries, rules, systems. When Saturn first ingressed into Aquarius was the day lockdown started, actually, here in America. So, and the big words that you really heard were lockdown and social distancing, which is a very Saturn and Aquarius theme, because Aquarius usually rules outcasts or bigger groups of societies, bigger groups of people. Aquarius is an air sign, so this has to do with ideas. And as you can tell lately, Saturn and Aquarius is everyone's fighting against whose ideas and whose frame of work is better. And so what you're really going to see as Mars and Venus enter Aquarius is this huge ramp up in energy in the Aquarius area. And Aquarius right now is really being defined by like social structures, social ideals, groups of people. And I think this is just going to complicate that more at the very minimum. But what's going to be really important is knowing where what Aquarius rules in your chart. So, if it's your, sixth house of work and day-to-day activities, you're going to be pretty busy and you're going to be working quite a lot. Or maybe you experience a little bit of health issues. But Mars and Venus are still going to be on top of each other. Where now, instead of in Capricorn, where it's about the game and playing the system, this is in Aquarius, where it's like, well, now it's about the groups of people that you're with and the identity that you label yourself with based on, the society that you're with. Not to mention, this is the Sun-Jupiter Cazimi, so there is some positive stuff kind of going on. But what I wanted to pretty much go over is that's really the major thing of March, is Mars and Venus in Aquarius. And then what I really want to get to is also Mercury is going to be in Pisces. My favorite way to explain Mercury in Pisces was, I don't know if you guys remember, because this was 30 years ago at this point, but here in America, right at the beginning of the pandemic, think February to March, right before lockdown. That was when Mercury was in Pisces, and it was so funny because I was watching like the White House like commentary every single day, and Mercury in Pisces, it was like no one knew what was going on. They were saying this, then they were saying that, and then they were doing this, they were doing that. It was Mercury is the messenger, and in Pisces is his detriment. And so, for example, as a tidbit on astrology in general, if you're really into synastry, this is something I talk a lot about. Your synastry with someone real, like, sure, you have Venus and Mars or, moon, sun conjunctions, and you love this person. That's great. But if that Mercury placement sucks, like, the biggest thing with relationships is communication. You need Mercury to be in a good place with synastry charts. Otherwise, like, you can have the perfect person, you can have your, soulmate or whatever. But if you guys can't have a conversation, how is it ever going to work out? You know what I mean? So when you have Mercury here in its sign of detriment, why I'm bringing this up is it's going to let me kind of fast forward to a little bit of March here. Notice Mars and Venus are still on top of each other a full month later. They made their exact conjunction on February 12th, and they're still pretty much on top of each other. And this is, again, the Aquarius stuff, the outcasting, the feeling... Again, it's super funny. I bullied a lot of people last year because a lot of people were talking about Saturn in Aquarius is everyone's going to hold hands and sing Kumbaya, and we're all going to, enrich communities, and, justice is going to be served. And that's like, you can go through every single ancient astrology book throughout time, throughout the, 2000 year history that we have on it. Saturn is called the greater malefic for a reason. Saturn rules restrictions and boundaries. And so personally, maybe here in America, I think we'll see lockdowns again because you're seeing them everywhere else in the world. That's kind of a different story by the time we get to March. But Mars, Venus, and next to Saturn and Aquarius is going to be bringing up those social distancing themes. It's going to be bringing up those, counterculture is also going to be on the rise. For example, the last time we had Saturn in Aquarius was in 1991 through 1993, 94, around that time. And I'm a really big U.S. political nerd and history nerd. And what was super funny was, after the Reagan administration and then the first Bush administration, you saw politics really kind of change, and people, wanted to get away from the old system and do things new. And 1992 was the last election where the third party candidate it was Ross Perot. Ross Perot was a third party candidate that got like 20% of the popular vote. And I'm bringing this story up just to kind of show you the Aquarius theme of like counterculture, going against the grain. Also, there was a huge libertarian movement back in the 90s, which I think really brings up the Saturn and Aquarius theme of people that are on the outsides, people that are usually outcasted from society, being much more, whether that's, important or brought up more. I'm bringing all this up to say those type of themes of doing things different and things being on the fringes are coming more to light. But Mercury is also going to be in Pisces, where the communication is not going to be there. Like, it's just going to be rambling. And Mercury is also going to conjoin Jupiter, which, okay, not to scare people, Mercury conjoining Jupiter is good. We like that. And it's also on the day of the Sun ingress. So that's really important for a lot of other reasons I don't have the time to explain today, but that's okay. But what I wanted to talk about is Mercury on top of Jupiter. Mercury is like a microphone, right? And Jupiter is expanding things. So Mercury on top of Pisces is like, everything's great, everything's fine. But Mercury is in detriment in Pisces, right? We may not be able to express or communicate. And I think there's going to be a lot of messaging issues here. And I think there's going to be a lot of communication issues throughout March while Mercury's in Pisces and while all this stuff is in Aquarius. Venus and Mars in Aquarius, you're going to be doing things different. You're going to be kind of doing things kind of against the grain, not necessarily one of two things. You're going to either have to go against what society tells you, or you're going to be pretty much locked down with what society tells you, and the thing is here, a lot of you are going to make up a narrative of what I mean by that. And I'm only speaking specifically in astrological terms here, but astrology is a really good, show and tell of our reality. So make of that what you will. I want you to use your imagination as, we do this video. But I think Mercury on top of Jupiter, the messaging gets really murky. That's funny that rhymes. The messaging gets really murky at this time. So just expect things to still be really confusing in March. Like, don't expect anything to be clear. So yeah, the Mars Venus. And so again, March has a lot of things. We have the Mars Venus conjunction on Pluto, and then we have the Aquarius stellium plus Mercury's in Pisces, which that leads us to April. So we get to April, it's Aries season, spring is starting, the sun, it's going to be a really, really cold and hard winter. And I think we're going to be really needing that sun going into Aries, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere. And that's going to really embolden a lot of people. And we're going to come back to this too. This is, we're like half hour into this. We're only on April. So we got plenty of time. But this looks exciting for the most part. But I want to get your attention to April 5th. Everything changes on April 5th. Mark my words. What's going to happen, what is going to describe April is a few things. There's going to be an eclipse in Taurus. Mind you, I didn't even bring this up. The nodes are now in Taurus and Scorpio, which I also am going to have a video of what the nodes are going to be doing in Scorpio and Taurus and how that's going to affect your sign. And we're going to talk about that because there's eclipses that we'll talk about in the year. I don't have enough time to just talk about that ingress right now. But I will, by the time you're watching this, I will have a whole video on that so you can know how that's going to be affecting you. I'm sure that will be posted somewhere here too. I got a lot of videos. I got a lot of upkeep to do with this video now that I'm thinking of it. But we're going to talk about that as time goes on. But what I want to bring up is Venus is going to enter Pisces. It's going to eventually conjoin Jupiter and Neptune, which is a really big deal. And we're going to get to that. But also there's a Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. Also, there's a Mars-Saturn conjunction here on April 5th. So this is truly like overstimulating. Like, this is truly a lot to take in. I want to break down this Mars-Saturn conjunction. By the way, this is April that we're talking about, April 5th. So we start April with this. Now, the last time Mars conjoined Saturn, I want to bring you guys back to a day. Let's think to March 12th, 2020. Saturn had just ingressed into Aquarius, and then literally a couple days later, Mars ingressed into Aquarius, and Mars and Saturn conjoined in Aquarius, which was the beginning of social distancing, lockdown, all of these, mandates, right? This is the we haven't had a Mars-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius since then. So I want to say that a lot of those themes will come back up, but I don't think so, only because there's a lot of other things happening that are much more positive, that are much better. But I do think at the very minimum, with Mars conjoining Saturn, Mars on top of Saturn is that lockdown energy. We're going to be, very disciplined with our actions. We're going to feel very restrained with what we feel like we can do, especially in Aquarius when it comes to bigger groups of people and societies. We're going to feel like as if we can only, Mars is a malefic and Saturn is a malefic. They're in fact the only two bad planets in astrology, and they're together, doing business together in Aquarius of societies and bigger groups of people. So again, just to make fun of and pick fun of at the Aquarius people are all about love and light. That ain't the case. I think Mars conjoining Saturn and Aquarius is we're going to have more issues coming from dogma around, our ideas of how things should be working, right? Aquarius is an air sign of like our ideas and our thoughts, and Saturn is all about rules, regulations, and systems. So we all have our own thoughts and opinions of how things should work. And I think at the very minimum, Mars conjoining Saturn is those ideas are actually going to maybe hinder maybe what we do a little bit, as if that's not already happening. But there's going to be a lot of constraint with what we can and can't do. But not to be Debbie Downer, there's Venus entering Pisces, and I've been saying this, I've been a broken record at this. If you've been watching my videos, and if you've been a client of mine, I've been, with my client sessions, what I've been doing is like, this winter sucks, but you just got to get through the winter to get to April. The second Venus enters Pisces, Jupiter rules Pisces, right? We like Jupiter in Pisces. This is really positive. And plus it's going to be conjoining Neptune. So this is like, have you ever liked something and then you loved it so much that like, you experienced it and it was even better than you imagined because it was just you were so like hypnotized by the romanticism and the idealism around it? That's this. So I think you're going to see two stories here. And this is what my personal prediction I think will be. I think there'll probably be more lockdowns and everything like that. But I think literally not even as a nation, but as a world, there's going to be two groups of people. People that are ready to not care about this anymore and to, move on with their lives because after 2 years of COVID, it's just too much traumatizing, right? Like they had to get over the flu at some point. But then you're also going to see another group of people that are very much like even more like, pro lockdown, pro everything else. So the divide is going to be real, but I also think for the most part, people are going to be minding their own business a little bit more. Venus is exalted in Pisces. So there's rulership, right? So I'm going to use a good analogy for you guys. I've been thinking about this analogy a lot. So Jupiter, we're going to call the Great Gatsby. It does everything big, does everything grand. Jupiter's going to be in its home sign. So Gatsby's got that money. It's on top of Neptune. These parties are just out of this world. And if you know about the Great Gatsby, he made all these parties to get this girl's attention, to get this girl to come to her party. Now, that's Venus. I don't know what the girl's name is. It's like, it's because Leonardo DiCaprio plays it. I conflate every character that Leonardo DiCaprio plays in with every movie. So like, I forgot what the girl's name is in The Great Gatsby. But anyway, Venus going into Pisces is like, you're the Great Gatsby. You're throwing this big party for this girl to come, and she comes. And you're going to have Venus exalted in Pisces. Venus is not only a welcomed, but an honored guest, a celebrated guest in Pisces. And so, it's like, if you guys know I'm a big Drake fan. You guys, if you don't know what the Drake effect is, I want you to Google the Drake effect. One of my favorite videos is literally, it's like, I don't even know who the rapper is, but there's this like concert and there's these rappers on stage and it's kind of chill energy. And then all of the sudden Drake comes out of nowhere and the whole building just like loses their minds. That's this transit, right? Now, again, Mars-Saturn conjunction is definitely really bad, and I don't want to get away from that. But like the second Venus enters Pisces, this is why I said I just think people are generally going to check out. I think generally people are just going to say, you know what? There's a reason why. You got to think, it's super funny. My generation thinks that the world's going to end and that, oh my God, I'm not going to have kids because what world are we going to have? Your ancestors have been saying that for thousands of years. It's always been the end of the world. Think of 1918, where literally, I don't know, I speak directly to Americans here because I know a lot of my followers in other countries get things, but I know a lot of my American followers don't. World War I was so bad, was so devastating. It literally changed like everything about how society functions. It was so depressing. So many people died, right? And then you had the Spanish flu. There is a reason why alcoholism and gambling and the roaring 20s followed after that, where things are really bad in one area, people are going to overcompensate in the other area. And what you're going to see starting April, and this is my prediction, is April is going to be a fucking party. April, in my opinion, I plan on taking the whole month off because I just know it's going to be a party, and we all need some serotonin and dopamine. We all need those things, right? And so I think this is where that begins. Not to mention also in April, Jupiter is going to be conjoining Neptune. This is a whole nother bigger transit. And I think the best reference I can think of for if you want to know more about this is actually Patrick Watson. Patrick Watson, he has a YouTube channel. I don't see him do too many videos, but he's a great astrologer. He's predicted, he's just predicted so many things super, super accurately. And I'm pretty sure he has an article, if I do remember correctly. And if I remember to post it, I'll try to post it in the description. But you should look at Patrick Watson, the Jupiter-Neptune cycle, because he's talked about this before much more in depth than I can right now. But what you're going to see is this like revitalization of the movie industry. Media is going to go crazy. Neptune rules the media. It rules that Hollywood, tricks and games. Neptune's discovery actually coincides with the invention of the camera. So like photography and literally, how much photography and media can just distort our reality, right? Jupiter on top of Neptune you're going to see some of the biggest hallmark movies of the decade come out. You're going to see, I think you're also going to see a big new social media probably come out, or at least some type of huge expansion with social media. At the very minimum, it's a party in April. And I want to fast forward to, we're going to get to April. So Venus is going to be in Pisces the whole time. And then Mars enters Pisces. Mars in Pisces, just to mention something, is going to be a huge change to Mars in Aquarius. The last time we had Mars in Pisces was from about April of 2020 till about July of 2020. And this is the greatest example is think of what everyone, like I don't know if you guys know Trey Kennedy. Trey Kennedy is a very famous like YouTuber comedian, but he had one of my favorite videos during lockdown because it was just like he went over all of the weird, like people were making bread. We were all excited. Like he does this video where it's like, you want to go for a walk? Remember like how exciting walks were when lockdown started? Like Mars and Pisces is just like this mixture between boredom and anything is fun. Really, just get me out of the house, get me to do something. Mars and Pisces is definitely good. Some people might think that's bad. Mars has triplicity in the water sign, so Mars is okay in Pisces, but we're going to be all types of, we're going to be all over the place. We're not going to be sure what to do, what not to do. And look, now we have Mars, Venus, Jupiter, Neptune all in Pisces. We're going to be all over the place, feeling all types of different ways. And so that's April 15th. What I want to fast forward to though is this. April 30th. In fact, yeah, it's pretty much right here. So there's about 10 things we got to break down here. Venus is conjoining Jupiter on top of Neptune. So each planet has a specific degree that it is the most exalted in, meaning it is the most highest praise. For that degree, for Venus is 28 Pisces. So literally, on May 1st, between April 30th and May 1st, Venus and Jupiter are going to conjoin. The two best planets, the planet of value and fun and love and sex, and the planet of doing it big, like going big or going home and, making things go really crazy. They're going to conjoin each other at Venus's favorite degree, her best degree to be on top of Neptune. So like, this is like, imagine the best thing ever happening to you, plus you're also on acid. So it saturates the whole experience. Not to mention, let's look at what's going on over here with the sun and the moon. Oh, it just so happens to be the first eclipse that we have in Taurus. So this is our introduction into the eclipses in Taurus. This is a solar eclipse, pretty much on top of Uranus. And this eclipse is ruled by Venus. So Venus is having, all control over this eclipse. And what's Venus doing? Oh, she's on top of Jupiter on her exalted degree on Neptune. So the whiplash of contrast of how shitty this year starts, I should say 2022, how shitty 2022 starts versus even just by April 30th. We're in a completely different universe. And so, for example, last year when Neptune stationed direct and retrograde, that's when the Pentagon came out with the alien papers. If there is one day, because Jupiter rules semen and Venus rules like life and there's a lot of life energy when it comes to these transits. If there is a day that we can confirm there's life on another planet or that aliens exist, it's this day. This is probably the day if that does happen. But if not, I also think in April, you're just going to see party after party, all of the things that got canceled in the winter. Everyone's just going to, and also too, if you're an event planner, this is a big thing. As an astrologer, I do things according to the astrology. I plan my events around this stuff, and it's totally worked out. I did a family trip in June when Jupiter was in Pisces, and it just worked out totally in time before the lockdowns. But this is literally some of the craziest, not to mention too, Mercury is also now in Gemini too. Like, this is literally like this is probably the craziest day of the year. This is one of the best transits of the decade. So truly, April 30th is a party. And it's a fucking Saturday. I've literally just noticed that. I haven't even noticed that it's a Saturday. That's so convenient. God, that's so convenient. So have fun, April 30th. Party, enjoy yourself. That's what's going to be going on here at the very minimum. Or at least, even if things aren't that amazing, this will at least be like, not a light at the end of the tunnel, but things will definitely be better at this moment. Excuse me, I just had to take a break real quick. So that's April. April really is a crazy month. And oh my gosh, what's the band? Not Simple Plan. Oh my God. They don't stop coming in. The Shrek band. Oh my God, I can't think of what their name is. Anyway, as they say, it don't stop coming and it don't stop coming because it only gets crazier from here. Which leads us to May. So the biggest thing with May is, I don't want to just say the one big thing with May is, there's actually a few big things with May. Let's kind of get to that day. So I want you to pay attention to here where Venus and Jupiter are. When we get to about May 2nd, Venus will enter Aries. Okay. The party's a little bit over at that point. But then, what day is it on? There we go. May 11th. Jupiter enters Aries. Jupiter flies through Pisces. And just like, when you're having the time of your life, it all goes by so fast. That's this Jupiter and Pisces transit. But then Jupiter enters Aries, where Jupiter is all about, again, expansion and hope and faith and belief. And it's in the sign of Aries, which is all about Mars, right? Action, drive, determination. Notice, for my astro nerds out there, Jupiter and Mars have mutual reception. They're having a little wife swap. They're in each other's signs right now. So there is this huge, there is this kind of Jupiter's in Aries. So it's like, if I believe it, I can do it. And Mars is in Pisces, where it's like, hey man, like, as long as if you ever like talk to an artist and they're just like, or if you've seen interviews with artists and they're like, how do you do what you do? And they're like, I don't know. I just kind of do it. That's very like Mars and Pisces and Jupiter and Aries. Like, but because I know I can just do it, I'm going to do it really big. Jupiter's going to go into Aries, where you got to look at where Pisces is at in your chart, but then where Aries is at in your chart. And Jupiter is going to, I mean, just blow this part of your chart up. Jupiter, again, expansion, but Jupiter is all about having faith, right? And I think with Jupiter going into Aries, the best way to really install faith is through action, right? You know, that's why we have things like magic. We can think things all day long, but if we do a little magic spell, or for example, for, you know, Christians, or, you know, for religious people, there's prayer, or there's giving back to people. Jupiter in Aries is like faith and optimism and hope through fighting. Well, and we're going to talk about fighting. There's a lot of fight stuff coming up too. Well, because as an astrologer, look, I speak for all astrologers when I say this. We are so sick of people. I personally am sick of people asking, Cameron, when does it get better? When has life ever gotten better? It is literally our human nature to find the bad things in life. Even if you did live a perfect life, you're still going to find out where the bad stuff is. This is why we use astrology, is because astrology can at least show us where the bad things are going to be. So at least we have an idea. So when you ask me, Cameron, when are things going to be good? Nothing's ever going to be good. You're going to have to get over that. And that's why you should make the best of what you have. And you should just be grateful for what you have. And that's Jupiter's lesson, by the way. Like, and also too, that's just basic life advice that you should have figured out by now. But Jupiter's going to go into Aries. This is going to be much more about, like, I think too, after all that Pisces stuff, it's kind of like, you know, have you ever been like sad or depressed, and then like you went out with your friends and you had a good time, and then because of that you were able to maybe work better or have more efficiency with your work or whatever that was? That's Jupiter in Aries. It's like maybe we need some dopamine and we can be much more productive and do more things, right? Then we get to, hold on, I got to go day by day here and when everything's going to hit. I think it's literally like the end. Yeah, there we go. It's literally May 30th. So not only is Mercury going to be retrograde, but Mercury will also pretty much station direct on the North Node. That's loud. That's very loud at the very minimum. But I want to talk about this, Mars and Jupiter. That is May 30th, May 29th. Mars is going to conjoin Jupiter in Aries. Go big or go home. Truly, go big or go home. Nut up or shut up. Put your money where your mouth is. True, I can't think of better ways to describe it than this. For one, you're going to see a lot of ballsy people take a lot of ballsy actions. Mars is all about fights and conflicts and energy. The last time we had Mars in Aries was when we had the Mars retrograde in summer and fall of 2020. And we all know how fun that year was. This is not the same case, though. This is a very different case. But Mars conjoining Jupiter in Aries is very like taking actions on our beliefs. And like, you know, you're gonna, well, for one, you're also probably gonna see an explosion. This is gonna be like, I would literally put money on the table right now. There's gonna be an explosion in the news, or if not an explosion, and I mean, at this point in the day, this is what's hard as astrologers making predictions, because the shit just keeps happening all the time. Because this could be like some type of notably violent thing happening. Like this will be like a notably violent day somewhere, or something happens that is truly a big deal. But I want you to, and again, why I'm doing this is for you guys, and I want you to think of your personal lives. Mars and Jupiter in Aries. This is going to take whatever Aries rules in your chart, and you're going to be doing it big. You're going to be going pretty big in this area, really maximizing this. And I mean, again, it's the same thing where it's like when you can rest and relax and you have that fun, and then you can, it's like, if you need to get a lot of work done, go and play. I'm a big believer of work hard, play hard. And if you really want to work hard, you got to play hard too. And that's this. Like, we had the fun playtime in April, and by the time we get to the end of May, we're going. And this is only for a short time. This is not forever. So use this while you can. If you've got big things that you need to do, if you've got big projects you're trying to do it here, do it then. Also, I mean, like Mercury stations direct like a couple days later, which leads us to June. So this is where, and you know, I just want you guys to think between maybe like 2016 and 2019, there's only so many changes that, you know, maybe things in your personal life change, but like, I mean, truly, we have seen how much change can happen in a calendar year from 2020 to 2021. By the time we get to June, I want you to think how different this is from when we first started the month. Jupiter was just entered just started the year, because Jupiter just entered Pisces. Venus was stationing on top of Pluto. We're in a very different world by now by the time we get to June. And so let's fast forward a little bit to talk about the big things of June. Venus is going to be in Taurus the whole time. Mars is going to be in Aries the whole time. Mercury will station direct. Let me just fast forward to about here. Venus is going to conjoin Uranus in the North Node. So Venus is going to be in her home sign. Mercury is going to be in its home sign. Mars is going to be in its home sign. Saturn's going to be in its home sign. There's a lot of domicile energy going on here. So I think June has a lot of constructive potential. Keyword is potential, because what I want to bring your attention to is, I didn't realize it happened this early, June 5th. Saturn stations retrograde. So typically, the Saturn stations are a pretty big deal. I think when Saturn stationed retrograde in May of 2021, I think that was when the Delta variant started coming up again, or maybe the lockdown restrictions came up again. But again, what's hard to talk about the lockdown restrictions is every country has them differently. So I don't know how this is going to look exactly. But Saturn stationing retrograde, you're going to feel that. That's definitely, and it's also like squaring Mercury in the nodes. So there's definitely going to be some stipulations on things. But Venus is in Taurus. We're enjoying things. We're having some stability. What I want to get to is this. Venus is going to conjoin Uranus on top of the North Node. At the minimum, this is very electrifying. This is very innovative. Mars is still on top of Jupiter. June looks pretty wild to me, in my opinion. I think Venus on top of Uranus, you have to think, Venus is all about value and fun. And Venus is in Taurus, where there's this stability, and it's conjoining Uranus, though, where it's like, in order to find stability, we're going to have to be inventive. We're going to have to be innovative with what we find stable, and also with what we value. Like Venus conjoining Uranus is like, maybe gold's not valuable anymore, but Bitcoin is more valuable. Not to say that this is a Bitcoin thing. I don't want you guys to think that, because I have my own opinions on that in the astrology disconnected from this video. And I might do a video about that. But I think Venus on top of the North Node too, Rahu, intensifies everything. It's going to get really loud. The Rahu is in Taurus, is in Venus's sign. So this is going to exacerbate the Venus stuff more. So Venus going on top of Uranus in the North Node, you're going to be really enjoying things to the extreme, like being like, fuck, I need to go enjoy this as much as I can. Saturn's going to station retrograde, where we're going to know what we can and can't do by this point. And really, it's just that Venus North Node Uranus thing that really defines June, really. Mercury will be in Pisces. So Mercury will be in Gemini. So we have Mercury in Gemini. Mercury is in its home sign. Venus is in its home sign. Mars is in its home sign. Saturn's in its home sign. There's a lot of, and that doesn't always mean good, but that I would much rather have all of their planets in their home signs than them in their detriments, right? That makes for example, with Mercury and Gemini, communication will be much easier at this point. With Venus and Taurus, enjoying things will be much easier at this point. Mars and Aries, doing things and confronting things and fighting things will be easier at this point. Saturn's in its domicile, where just being disciplined and being serious will be easier at this point. Not necessarily more fun or good or better, but easier. Then Venus will enter Gemini, and that's really most of June. That's really the big stuff of June until we get to July. Where were we? July? I had to take another break for a second. Okay, July. So clearly it's been a crazy year up to this point. And, there's astrologers that spin everything as if it's transformational and life-changing, and you're going to go through a portal. And you guys know me. I'm just not like that. July is, not to say that July is like that at all. July is just really not that big of a month at all. The only two things I want to talk about with July is Mars enters Taurus. That is a huge energy change from Mars conjoining Jupiter and Aries to Mars going into detriment. So Mars is in Aries, right? When we talked about the Mars-Jupiter conjunction, Mars is doing things very intensely. Mars is all about action, drive, and energy. Mars is going to be on top of Jupiter, so it's going to be doing things super duper duper big. But then Mars enters Taurus. Now, the last time Mars entered Taurus was actually pretty historical. That was actually January 6th was the last time Mars entered Taurus. That was the day Mars entered Taurus, which one of the most compelling, I think, things about when Mars entered Taurus when the insurrection happened was the guy wearing the bull horns. Like, that was just so, and Mars is like fights and chaos, right? And what's also funny is Mars is in detriment in Taurus, where the fights are weak and the fights aren't good. And that insurrection it was just not like that crazy of a thing, right? It was I think a very weak-handed action, although it caused a lot of problems. With what I want to bring up with Mars and Taurus, though, is, our energy, our drive is going to slow the fuck down. I don't know about you guys, but I remember January and just being like, it was like after the election was over, there was like everyone just chilled out after a really intense summer and fall and winter of, an election here in America. It was like one of the craziest elections. And then it was like Mars went to Taurus and it was just like, there was this almost relaxed feeling, right? Mars is in detriment in Taurus, where like our action, drive, energy is very like lessened. We're not as amped up. But Mars in Taurus is a fixed sign, right? So there's this kind of stubbornness with our ideas. So Mars is going to enter Taurus, and really that's like the big thing with July. Mars going into Taurus is just, we're going to be slowing down. And the reason I brought this up was like, compared to June and July, compared to May and June, where we're doing things in these big ways and all this big stuff, like a lot of things slow down in July, I think, with Mars going into Taurus. That's also to mention too, here on, what is it? Isn't it like my birthday or like a couple days after my birthday? At the very end of July, on this new moon in Leo, Jupiter stations retrograde, which, like, again, planet station retrograde every year, not that big of a deal. But with Jupiter stationing retrograde, there's going to be this kind of slowing down, like Jupiter going into Aries. For example, here's a good example. When Jupiter went into Pisces in 2021, I'm like saying last year as if it was, I'm in 2021. You might be in the future. But when Jupiter went into Pisces, it was like, oh, mask mandates are gone. We can relax again. There's hope. And then it was like Jupiter station retrograde. And it was like, and then you start seeing like the COVID numbers go up, and you start seeing people talk about Delta, and you just knew that the party was over, and you knew that was going to come to an end. Jupiter in Aries, where Jupiter is like, I'm going to do it this big way. I have all this energy. Jupiter station retrograde is like, okay, I've found my limits with my energy. Not that you're not going to still be doing things in big ways, but you're only going to have so much energy. And, Jupiter going direct is kind of introducing all of these things, giving you all of these things. And then Jupiter retrograde is like, okay, what did you learn over that period? Since Jupiter went into Pisces back in December, what have you learned up to there? Because Jupiter retrograde is a time of learning, a time of integrating what you've learned, a time of like, if Jupiter going direct is like you taking down notes in class, Jupiter retrograde is like doing the work before you do the test. This is like doing the math problem so you can know how to apply the lessons that you've learned, right? Which is really important because that leads us to August 1st. So then we get into August, and again, not a lot happens in July, but this is how we start August 1st. This is wild. I don't know if you guys even seen this because, this is almost like, for me, I'm literally recording this in August of 2021. But this is probably one of the biggest transits. This is going to pretty much define 2022. I think just like we have seen as Saturn has squared Uranus, infrastructure cannot hold up with the changing climate. We had the Texas power grid failure. We had the what was it the last time? There was like an oil disaster again. There was what was the other thing that just happened? I can't even remember. There's probably going to be some type of not economic disaster. I keep wanting to say evolutionary disaster. That's not the case. We already did that with microplastics, but environmental disaster. That's the word I'm looking for. Mars on top of the North Node like just turns up the volume to like North Node means panic. North Node means, oh my God, everyone freak out right now. Uranus is destabilizing, and Mars on top of Uranus is like, there's probably going to be some type of environmental thing that really comes up. I think some type of environmental thing. The big thing here is to look at what Taurus rules in your chart, because Mars conjoining Uranus on the North Node is like, this is like doubling down on your bet and you being wrong. Like, this is a very risky move. Mars is right. Our actions, drive, and energy. It's in Taurus, where we're being very slow. We're being very lazy. We're being very stable with our energy is a good way to look. Like, Mars in Aries is very like just doing it, getting it, like taking care of it. Mars in Taurus is like getting in a groove with things, like kind of even getting in a rut. But like, if you've been lazy all this 2022, let's say you were the one person who just hasn't done anything in 2022. Mars conjoining Uranus in the North Node is, you're going to get out of your chair. Like, you're going to get shook up. You're going to get woken up in a way that you weren't ready for. And I really can't emphasize how big of a deal this one is. The more I look at this, the more I'm like, yeah, I think this is going to be environmental related. But of course that can look a lot of different ways in this day and age, because that could be, structurally related. That could be about fires. That could be about water. I think this is going to be much more related to earth stuff, or maybe an earthquake. Maybe it's an earthquake, maybe not. I don't know. But I will definitely say an environmental disaster is probably going to happen, because then literally a few days after this, then Mars square Saturn. I want you guys to think of the last time Mars squared Saturn. It hasn't happened for me yet. This will be November 10th of 2021, Mars squared Saturn. I'm sure something's going to happen on that day, even though that's in the future from right now. And you could think of what was going on for you back then. But the last time Mars squared Saturn, where Saturn was in the superior position, because if we rotated them like this, Saturn would be at top. Here, let me show you. This is what we call in the superior position. So Saturn is squaring, Mars is applying, because Mars moves this way, Mars is applying to Saturn, and Saturn's in the superior position. The last time we had this was during the Mars retrograde of 2020. And in fact, because I'm just a US political nerd and history nerd, the debate, I don't know if you guys remember the presidential debate. I think it wasn't the first one. Maybe it was the first one. It was either the first or the second presidential debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And it was just 2 hours of just two old men arguing at each other. And it was just fight, and anger. And it was so just, nothing about it was professional at all. But you just felt the tension. That was, what I love about American politics too, especially because, that presidential debate that was on September 27th or September 26th, look it up. That was the Mars Saturn square. And, while that's a completely different one than that tension of fights and anger going against, the systems and the structure, there's going to be a lot of tension here. There's going to be a lot of, and a lot of the fights and a lot of the anger that people have they're going to have to be restrained about it. So and you got to look at, now what's important is Saturn is squaring Uranus too. This is a part of the Saturn-Uranus square stuff that has been going on. But Saturn's been squaring Uranus since really 2021. Look at where Aquarius rules in your chart. Look at where Taurus rules in your chart. What have you been taking care of in that area? What have you been more disciplined in? What have you been, like, for me, Uranus rules, or Uranus is going over my 5th house cusp, and the 5th house rules things like vices, and Saturn's my time lord right now, which rules things like weed. And for the first time in my life, I've just been I randomly stopped smoking. I'm a stoner, and I've just kind of just stopped smoking weed, really randomly, which was kind of unexpected. I didn't really have a reason to. But that's, where the Saturn-Uranus square has showed it for me in my life. In my third/second, in my 5th house, in 6th house, which is also coincided with my health stuff that I've got going on. But I want you to think of what Aquarius and Taurus rule in your chart, and where have you been more disciplined in the Aquarius area, and where has that given you more freedom or more liberation or more innovation in the area of Taurus? Mars being here is just going to shake it up. For better or for worse. This isn't going to be bad for everybody, right? But this is going to be a heavy, hard transit that we're going to feel. And, this is really the big thing of August, because when we move forward, let's move forward. Let's go day by day here. that's really the big thing until Mars enters Gemini, which is on August 20th, which if anything, that's just going to feel like a release. Like, oh God, thank God Mars isn't in Taurus. I think Mars entered Gemini. This would have been March. Yeah, this would have been March of 2021. And January and February of 2021 was very different from March of 2021. Mars and Gemini will feel like quite a relief. The North Node will be over Uranus at this point. Saturn's still squaring Uranus, so things are still a little bit up in the air. But like, what I just want to say is August really isn't that big of a deal. I don't want to say, let me take that back. I immediately regret saying that. August is a really big deal, but it's just the Mars-Uranus North Node conjunction square Saturn. And then the rest of August is actually pretty, I don't want to say chill, but just not important. There's really, like, the other things really just aren't that important. So that leads us now to September, where a lot of different things kind of happen. The big thing I want to talk about is, where are we at here? Okay. So let's talk about this. Mercury, I haven't talked about any of the Mercury retrogrades yet, but Mercury is going to station retrograde opposite Jupiter here on, does it happen on the same day? Wow. So pretty much almost on the same day. There's two things I got to talk about. Two things. I keep putting my hands like behind where this is. Mars enters shadow between September 7th, September 8th, sometime between there. Which means Mars is going to retrograde this year. We're going to have a Mars retrograde at the end of 2020. We'll get there when we get there. But the themes of what the Mars retrograde are going to be about starts when Mars enters shadow here. And this is going to be a pretty big deal by this point. But also, literally the same day Mars enters shadow, Mercury stations retrograde opposite Jupiter, where, here's the thing. Let me just back up for a second. We are now in September of 2022. I'm recording this in August. Like I said, this is a year from now. A lot is going to be different by this point. So I'm not confident in saying what I think any of this is going to be. I could tell you how it's going to go, but saying the specifics, I have no idea. We just got to get there. You know what I mean? But what I also want to say with this too is these aren't big transits. For example, the Venus retrograde on Pluto, that's a big cycle. That's a big transit. The Saturn-Uranus square, that's a big deal. The Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, that's a big deal. Mars retrograde, it happens quite frequently, and nothing, is really happening with this Mars retrograde that's that important. Like, yes, it's going to square Neptune, but like, not the biggest deal. It's going to trine Saturn, which in my opinion is the best part about this. I think this is actually going to be a really good Mars retrograde, but that's just my opinion. But what I'm trying to say here is in September, the things that are going on in September are while of course bad things and good things are always simultaneously going on, and that's subjective. In contrast to the big, huge transits we have in 2022, this is nothing. Truly, we start August off with a really crazy shakeup, and then from there, it's really chills out. But Mercury stationing retrograde in Libra, opposite Jupiter in Aries, is like, okay, clearly I want to do this, I believe in this, but I still got to communicate things in a nice way. But that's, a story for another day. But Mars enters shadow. We go through September. Mars, let's see here. Then, there's the Mercury retrograde opposite Neptune. And then I think here we go. September 27th is when Mars trines Saturn. And this is why I really like this Mars retrograde, because it's going to be trining Saturn. So I think this is really going to, like for example, all of the cancel culture stuff and all of the fights with people. I think a lot of things are actually going to get worked out with that. A lot of the kinks, I think I should say is a better term for that, are going to get worked out. But Mars will trine Saturn. So while Mars might be in shadow and it might be slowing down, Mars and Gemini, we're going to be doing this, we're going to be doing that. Mars and Gemini has to be doing two things at once. Mars and Gemini has to be very adaptable and changeable. And it's trining Saturn and Aquarius, where it's like, where we've been disciplined, where we've been mature is helping us, be adaptable and be movable at this point. But then we get to October. Really, hold on. I just want to make sure I'm getting all of the dates right here. Because that's how life works. Everything kind of like lines up at somewhat at the same time. The beginning of October is very different from the end of October. Uh, let's get to the, well, here's the thing. Saturn's going to be squaring Uranus. They're exactly happening at 18 degrees, both retrograde. Saturn squared Uranus beginning of 2021, middle of 2021, at the end of 2021. And then this is really the fourth and final big shebang of Mars square Uranus is in October. And I mean, like what you saw with that is like you saw the AMC stock market thing, the GameStop thing, you saw the Texas power grid failure, you saw it's again unpredictable. Oh, the Suez Canal, that's what I was thinking of. I was like, what was that thing that happened? The Suez Canal blockage that fucked up everything. And it may not, again, what I loved about the Suez Canal being blocked is it's just like it wasn't even that crazy. Like, I don't want to say it wasn't that crazy or that big of a deal. It wasn't like, like COVID hit and that stopped all supply lines. It was just something random and stupid that got in the way of everything. Sometimes it can look like that. And so Saturn squaring Uranus all October. Expect the unexpected. All of these areas in your life where you've been shaking up and changing things up and down, we're going to come back to this stuff by this point. And then where are we at? We keep going through October. The actual Saturn-Uranus square. Here we go. Then we get to October 11th, and that's when Mars squares Neptune. Now, this is only important because Mars is going to retrograde and come back and square Neptune a few times. So it's going to be important to think about this and where it's going to be hitting your chart. But Mars squaring Neptune is like us taking actions based on evidence we think we have, but we're misreading that evidence. We're misreading that data, and it's not exactly true, or maybe it's not exactly what we appeared. Mars in Gemini squaring Neptune in Pisces is like, or like, have you ever gotten in an argument with someone and you're providing sources, but then they just kind of throw you for a loop and they just throw you some other shit that doesn't even matter about the conversation, but it just confuses you enough to make you not want to like continue the conversation. Mars square Neptune is, we're going to feel very confused on what to do. Like Mars is in Gemini. We're going to be doing 10,000 different things at once. And Mars squaring Neptune is like, that's going to feel overwhelming. That's going to feel confusing. We're not going to know exactly what we want to do. And this is much more on a personal level at this point. So like, with Jupiter in Aries, there's just a huge focus on the Mars stuff this year anyway. And I just think Mars squaring Neptune is we're going to be very lost at this point, even though we're, doing things like Mars is still going to be trining Saturn, things are still going to be happening regardless if we know what we're doing or not. And then plus also the Sun and Venus are going to be trining Saturn. October's genuinely pretty good for this part. It's very unexpected ups and downs, but all of this air stuff is pretty nice. What changes is, hold on, be patient with me because I have this written down for both October and November, and I don't know which one it is, if it's October or November. Because like 3 things happen. We're going to go day by day here. So check this out. I'm sure you've noticed this. There's a Venus Cazimi. That's right. Okay, so the Venus, that's okay. I wasn't sure. There's a Venus Cazimi at 28 Libra. This is great. I truly think, regardless of what your opinions or your beliefs are about social politics stuff, like vaccines or masks, I really think October is going to really provide this environment to like make a lot of peace with people. This is all air stuff. So this is like having the conversations that we need to have. This is a Venus Cazimi in Libra. This is like making that peace. Saturn's about to station direct literally on October 22nd on the Venus Cazimi while it's trining Mars. I really think a lot of things kind of work out for just a moment. You know what I mean? There's a lot of peace just in the moment, but then everything changes on October 23rd when the Sun and Venus enter Scorpio. Now, that's right. So there was the Venus Cazimi in Libra. I'm still trying to remember all of these transits as I'm like telling you guys this stuff. Saturn will station direct. All of these things work out, but then we get this. There's this total solar eclipse in Scorpio. Now, in 2021, we had an eclipse technically in Taurus and Scorpio, but the nodes weren't in Taurus and Scorpio yet, so it kind of didn't count. But it did give us a little bit of idea of what to expect. This is going to be our first eclipse in Scorpio, our first solar eclipse in Scorpio on the South Node. It's not going to be fun. It's really not going to be fun. This is going to be, well, this is the thing. I think this is going to be the South Nodes in Scorpio. Let it go. Truly, like, this is about letting go, getting over it. And not a lot of people want to get over their shit. A lot of people want to hold on to their anger and their rage because they feel justified about it. And it's just not appropriate. And I think there's going to be a lot of letting go. There's going to be a lot of releasing stuff. This is going to feel really gunky. I think, Scorpio season 2022 is going to be really weird. Like, we're just like, this is what's kind of like, we've all grown up. And, maybe when you were younger, you had a lot of vengeance or anger about something, and then you just kind of got over it. Time heals all wounds. And so I think a lot of this solar eclipse starting in Scorpio is draining. This is exhausting. We have to change this. This doesn't work anymore. But it's going to really hit us in the ego, and we're not going to want to. Which then, hold on, we're not even done with October yet. October really, like, July things slow down. August has a crazy day or two, and then it's not good doing much. September really isn't doing much. October really has everything, because then also in October, Jupiter goes back into Pisces. And we're going to talk about that here in a second with November, because what I want to get to is, where are we at here? I'm pretty sure it's Halloween, right? I wrote Halloween down. Give me a minute. So Halloween is actually when Mars stations, October 30th. So look, Jupiter goes back into Pisces. So look, there's so many things like Saturn-Uranus square, Mars squares Neptune. There's a Venus cazimi in Libra. Jupiter goes back into Pisces, and Mars stations retrograde, and there's a solar eclipse in Scorpio. That's 6 huge things in October of 2022. So just to kind of recap here, January is fucking crazy. February is a little depressing. March is a little depressing. April is literally a party. May is even that the party continues into the morning. June is cool. July things slow down. August starts off with like a headache, and then September, and then the rest of the month's pretty chill. September's pretty chill, and then October it's just like one thing after another. But it's all different stuff. It's not good or bad. It's just like things happening. And then we get to Halloween. I thought this eclipse was happening on Halloween. Well, anyway, that leads us into November. So we have the Mars station retrograde. That's spooky for Mars station retrograde on Halloween is pretty spooky in my opinion. But what I want to get to is November. We'll have Jupiter go back into Pisces. Jupiter has been retrograde now since July. We talked about that. And Jupiter is going to station direct at 28 Pisces. So Jupiter is actually getting ready to station direct. But Jupiter is just going to dip back into Pisces just for a little bit. Just a little tiny bit. And the thing is, Jupiter goes back into Pisces. I want you to think, this is why I keep referencing, what was it like on May 13th of 2021? What I saw on Twitter, what a lot of astrologers, we all kind of agreed is that there was this sense of like mushiness. Like it wasn't like, oh, everything's great now that Jupiter's in Pisces, but there was this like, like we don't feel like we have to be holding things up so much. And I think Jupiter going back into Pisces here in November, it's the same thing, it's a water sign. We're going to be much more in tune with our emotions and in our environment with our emotions, right? Venus is also on the South Node at this time, opposite Uranus, but that actually leads me to, wait for it, I hope you guys see what's about to happen. Do you see it yet? There it is. Look at, okay, hold on. Sorry for that making people uncomfortable. For one, it's a Mercury cazimi on the South Node in Scorpio. This is not good news. This is not fun news. This is very like, a truth that was very dark and secret coming out. Things that are underground. Like, again, Scorpio literally rules what's underground, the underneath. And I think, this could be like an infrastructure problem. you know, here I'm speaking specifically to the things in the US here, like an infrastructure problem. Maybe there's like oil seeping into our water or something, because that's just how, you know, the 21st century is. But it's a fucking eclipse. It's an eclipse. It's a Mercury Cazimi total lunar eclipse on Uranus squaring Saturn. This isn't good. This is not a fun day. And again, this isn't for me to be a Debbie Downer. And I also look around. Like, I really hate when people are like, oh, things can be better. And like, Cameron, why are you being so, you know, like a doomer? And it's just like, look around. Name one country that isn't going through it right now. You know, maybe that was a little bit different in 2019 before there was a worldwide pandemic and no economic devastation yet. But we're in a different time now. And this is, again, November of 2022. So this is a long time for me personally. This is over a year in advance from where I'm at right now. So I can only really say so much about this. But this isn't going to be a fun day. This is going to be a pretty dramatic revelation. This is a total lunar eclipse on Uranus squaring Saturn. Scorpio is a fixed sign. Aquarius is a fixed sign. Taurus is a fixed sign. And when you have all of these squares and oppositions, it's a Mexican standoff, right? If all of this was happening in, let's say, Gemini, Pisces, and Sag, at least things would be changeable, right? The mutable signs can change their ideas. Fixed signs don't bend, they break. This is like a breaking point. This is going, you know what? Fuck this. You know what? Fuck this shit. I'm changing this. I'm doing that. This is that scene in, I think it's Inglourious Bastards, where they all have the gun to each other and they're just like, it's going to go down right now. And it will. So expect some, you know, turbulence. And also, this is literally a south node Mercury. This is an eclipse ruled by Mars, and Mars is retrograde squaring Neptune. I think there's going to be a lot of confusion, a lot of uncertainty with what we're doing, with what's the right thing to do, what's the wrong thing to do. And so it'll be pretty dramatic. And really, that's the big thing of November. That's really the big part of November. Now, what I do want to bring up here is Jupiter, like Mercury is going to be next to Venus and Scorpio, trining Jupiter and Pisces. So for the water signs out there, I mean, you guys know me. I'm not the biggest water transit fan. I don't have any water placements. But for the water signs, this is a really good juice up. This is good. Like, this is deep, intimate feelings. Deep, intimate, very deep feelings is the least I can really say. Venus will trine Jupiter. What I want to get to is, I want you to keep your eye on Mercury and Venus. Keep your eye on Mercury and Venus. It's really important. We're going to come to that in a minute. And then here, what is this? On November 18th, Mars will be retrograde squaring Neptune. So when Mars squares Neptune in October, that was earlier in October. I think that was October 18th. I think that's what I said. But we're going to come back to that here on November 18th. You know, Neptune rules the media, which the media is not your friend. Like, you know, I don't really care what side of the political aisle you're on, like, especially for the right people, but also especially for the left people. Like, the media is not your friend. They're not here to help you. They're here to divide us between each other and not actually go after the people that actually oppress us. They want you to fight with your brothers and your sisters and your family, and not the mega corporations and governments that want to control your every existence. So if you're not paying attention to the media, you know, this is a good time to not pay attention to the media. But Mars retrograde squaring Neptune is, I think you're going to just see a lot of chaos because of the media, a lot of maybe even propaganda. Mars retrograde and Gemini squaring Neptune. I just think people are just not going to know what to trust. They're not going to know what to believe. They're not going to know what to see. There's going to be a lot of mass hysterical confusion at this time. Like, it's not going to be easy. But I want you to pay attention to Mercury and Venus. And then there we go. November 23rd, Jupiter stations direct. Great. We love Jupiter stationing direct in Pisces. That's something for the good stuff. So again, you know, Jupiter, wherever Pisces rules in your chart, is going to be uplifted, expanded. There's all of this kind of like, okay, time to move forward. Then let's see. Notice now, let's back up, because this is a good segue into my next point. Mercury and Venus really start conjoining each other here at the beginning of November. They're about 4 degrees apart, which Mercury and Venus, they never go that far from each other. Mercury is only ever 23 degrees away from the sun, and Venus is only ever 45 degrees away from the sun. So they're never really all that far apart, but it's kind of rare that they're this close by a degree for so long. And just keep watching them as I click through, because we're not done with them yet. So here they are, still conjoining each other. Jupiter stations direct. Mercury and Venus are still on top of each other by a few degrees. They go opposite Mars, while they're also sextiling Saturn. I like this. I truly think this will be a good Mars retrograde. And that says a lot, because I think anything will be better than the last Mars retrograde. But I think a lot of this Mars retrograde is like getting down the ideas and like knowing what ideas are worth fighting for. Maybe not fighting with ideas and not fighting with, like, Mars trining Saturn is, well, I don't want to say it's just good, as if that's a blanket statement. It's going to be good for some people. It's going to be bad for other people. That's just astrology. And this is why you should book a reading with me, so you know if it's going to be a good one or a bad one for you. But, Mars is trining Saturn. At the minimum, while we might be fussing and crying, Mars trining Saturn means that it's at least constructive and we're going to get somewhere. Like when Mars retrograded squaring Saturn in September and fall and winter of 2020. That just sucked, and there was no constructive. It wasn't constructive. It just sucked. This might suck, but at least it's constructive. At least there's some type of, a positive thing happening. At least, there's going to be results from it. But then we get to December, and notice, let me move the day here. Mercury and Venus are still pretty close to each other. Like, they're not very far apart. And this is almost a month later. Like, that's typically pretty rare. Or it's not the rarest thing in the world, but, Mercury's also going to be squaring Jupiter. Venus will square Neptune at this point. We're going to be pretty distracted, I think, at the most part. But then I want to get to here. What's really going to define December is we have a full moon on top of Mars. Typically, when Mars is retrograde, there is a full moon on the Mars retrograde because Mars retrogrades coincide with it being opposite the sun. So, of course, there's going to be usually like a full moon on top of the Mars retrograde when Mars is retrograde. So this will really highlight the Mars retrograde in Gemini stuff. Where Mars is going backwards in Gemini. It's kind of saying, I set Mars retrograding in Gemini is like backpedaling on your words, being like, maybe you said something, but then you're like, well, now information's changed, so I'm going to backpedal on that. And, this is in Sagittarius and Gemini, so the sun's in Sag. We're really focused on our beliefs. We're really focused on our philosophies. We're really focused on our vision and our faith, and it's opposite Mars and Gemini, where it's like, Jupiter here is in Pisces, where our faith and our ideas of what we believe are just so all over the place that I don't know if we're going to really know how to take action on it effectively. But that full moon, this is, it also, mind you, like I said, I've said this a few times now, there's a lot of big transits this year. So like, this is just a full moon, right? This isn't the biggest deal in the world. There are way bigger transits happening this year besides a fucking full moon on a Mars retrograde. But this is one of the highlights of December. So this is the more important part of December. Venus and Mercury are still 4 degrees away. And then, hold on. I got to get day by day here because I forgot what day this all happens on. Mars doesn't station retrograde. Mars doesn't station direct until January of 2023. So don't worry about that. We go into the year with Mars retrograde. But then Jupiter enters Aries again on December 20th. So again, think of, God, what day was it? May 11th, I think, was the day that we talked about, is when Jupiter enters Aries. We're going to come right back to that. We're going to be like, all right, I know what I believe. I know how I feel. It's time to go. It's time to do it big. And this is really going to dramatically change the vibe of this Mars retrograde. Jupiter being in Pisces and Jupiter going to Aries, like Mars and Gemini retrograde is like, hold on, Jupiter, I'm not ready yet. But what I want to get to is we have the Mars opposition full moon, Jupiter enters Aries, and then this is on December, of course it's like on the last day. Venus and Mercury are still on top of each other. Now they're 2 degrees, 1 degree, and then boom. Mercury stations retrograde on Venus, pretty much on Pluto. Now, if you remember at the very beginning of this video, now that's a fucking hour and a half long, Venus stationed retrograde on Pluto. Mercury stationed direct on Pluto. Pluto is back at 27 degrees Capricorn, back where the US's Pluto return is going to be. All of those themes that happened and all of those things that happened in December and January and through March of 2022, we come right back to as we literally end the year on December 29th. It's literally almost the same thing. It's like literally almost the same exact thing happens, except it's not a Venus retrograde. It's just a Mercury retrograde. Again, this is so far out, I can't even begin to predict what this is going to be. But what I can say with concrete confidence is that whatever this is going to be pretty much a repeat of what the end of December of 2021 into about March of 2022 has in store. And that after that, we get into, boom, the new year. Mars is still retrograde. And that gets us to 2023. I'm a little tired from that. That was a lot. That was a lot to go over. To recap everything, one of the things I just want to say is, like, again, this is a big year. This is a long year. 2020 was a very, very big year in a lot of ways that astrologers talked about. 2021 had a few things like the Saturn-Uranus square and like Jupiter going to Pisces, and that was kind of it until the end of the year with the Venus retrograde. 2021 was not that significant of a year, astrologically speaking. 2022, though, it's a whole fucking novel. Like there's stories, and there's tragedy, there's comedy, there's celebration, there's horrible, atrocities. 2022 is truly the whole package of human experience. And that's, I think that attests to the times that we're in. I think we live in very crazy, turbulent times. And for all of you thinking that, it drives me crazy when I see things online where people are like, oh, or like, we can end COVID this way, or if we just did this, it would all change. Get that out of your head. The world is going to keep going in the direction that it's going in. And we're not all going to agree on one thing on one day at one time, and everything's going to be fixed and perfect. There's still going to be problems, and where the problems that we have right now are going to keep leading down the path that they're going down, right? I doubt anything's going to really throw a wrench in to change it, but of course that's also very specific. That depends on what happens with the Venus retrograde. Well, I'm bringing all of this up to say, like, this is going to be a very intense and good year, but also, like, if you're just waiting around for COVID to end, you're going to wait till you're dead. If you are waiting around for, for the revolution and for, to take over the government, like, you're like, it's one of those things of, you need to live your life. And I think a lot of 2022 is about living your life. It's about, and it's not necessarily, this isn't necessarily the year about, like, like for example, 2020 was there's so many things out of your control. There were so many things that were going on, so many moving parts. There's so many things ending and so many things changing. Everything has ended already, and we're already in we had the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. We're in a whole new world. We're not going back to the old world. That's not to say that things won't ever return to some type of normality. And it's also, for everyone, it has been almost 2 years. It's normality. Normalcy is not a word. It was a made-up word by a shit president. It's literally normality. We will get to a sense of normality at some point in our lives, but it's not going to look the way that it did back then. It's going to look completely different. And I'm going to tell you right now, and this is what is so, for me, it almost gives me goosebumps looking at Mercury stationing retrograde on Pluto, because it's almost like by the whole year, we're right back to the things that we ended 2021 with. So we're not done. None of this is over. None of this is done. I think there's a lot of good things that happen in 2022. 2022 is far from a bad year. There's a lot of bad things. Like I said, that's every year, but it's very, very far from a bad year. If anything, it is one of, like, we have some really awesome transits. We have some really good things. And I think we should be embracing those. I think, as not only an astrologer, but as a human being that lives on planet Earth, we have got to, and my Libra moon is totally jumping out right now. dude, like we've got to get back to some type of peace, some type of agreement. You know, this whole everyone hates each other, everyone's mad at, you know, institutions, everyone's mad at governments, everyone's mad at their brothers and sisters and their neighbors and their community, and everyone's just fucking angry. And it's literally like, at what point, like I don't know how much longer I can deal with all the anger and the frustration and the hate. And at some point, you know, there's got to be some type of change, I think. And that change comes down to individual changes, because it all comes back down to the individual. Where can you make, like, again, rather than waiting, you know, for example, all the anti-vax people, rather than waiting for, you know, all of these, you know, things to change in your life so you can live back to your normal life, why don't you just do it anyway? Why don't you just live your normal life anyway? And for all the pro-vaccine people that just think it's everyone else's fault, like, instead of blaming everything on them, why don't you do the things that are going to make your life different? Like, take personal responsibility and think for yourself. That's something that I just preach a lot on this channel. And that's the way I live my life. So I have to say that to you. I don't tell you guys things that I don't believe in myself. And I know I'm just kind of ranting here, but like, as an astrologer, it's super hard to talk about what the year's going to have ahead and not bring up current socioeconomic, political tensions, and all the problems that we have. Right? It's hard for me to not address those, and also too, you know, it's hard to talk about these things because, you know, some people paint me as like a neo-Nazi white supremacist, and then other people paint me as like a snowflake communist. So for me, there's really no winning on either side. I'm clearly just a projection board, usually for people's projections. But what I can say though is that, like, at what point do we continue on this path and just let things be the way that they are? Like, when are you going to go out of your way to try to change things and make things different for yourself and your life? You know, it's really annoying seeing both sides of the aisle blame each other for all of this stuff. And it's just like, again, this is why I brought up the media thing. The media is not your friend. I don't care what you're watching or what you're reading. I don't give a shit. The media is not your friend. They are more interested in dividing me and you. I don't care if you agree or disagree with me. They're more dividing me and you than they are actually attacking the people that are in power, the things that are actually problematic. So my thing is if you want society to keep crumbling, keep attacking your brother and sister, keep attacking the other individuals. If you don't want that to happen, think for yourself and start thinking ahead, in my opinion. And it's just, we're getting to a time in this world where that is becoming more and more increasingly important, is to actually think about things, actually think where things are going. And of course, I could rant on this forever, but I just want to end on there because 2022 is a lot of a year, and we kind of come back right where we started. And I look at this and, you know, do what you can to make some type of progress this year. You know, this is a good year. Enjoy yourself. We need it. You know, even if you've been miserable and suffering, find a way to enjoy yourself. You deserve it. We all deserve it. This has been, living in these times right now is hard. You know, living in these times before COVID was fucking hard. You know, like what was the statistic? Like half of Americans couldn't, like, I was one of those Americans for a long time where, like, I literally had to cancel like so many things because I got a flat tire one time, and I was like, well, there goes my rent. You know, it's been a hard time to live in. And I think 2022, if you're looking for a window of opportunity to have some fun, this is it. That's not to say your problems aren't going to go away, but you're going to have to actively go out of your way to enjoy yourself. And I think we all deserve that, and we need that. And I think if we all just celebrated and partied a little bit, if we all just kind of, I think it'd be easier to solve all these problems. But that's just my opinion on this. So anyway, that's 2022. Like I said before, I'm going to do a year ahead horoscope for each zodiac sign. That's going to be posted somewhere. There's going to be a Venus retrograde video that I do. That's going to be posted somewhere. I'm also going to do a video on the nodes, both in Taurus and Scorpio, and talking about all the eclipses and how that's going to affect your sign. That's going to be somewhere. Is there any other? Oh yeah, Patreon. If you really support me and you enjoy this content, please support me on Patreon. That's the whole reason why I'm able to do this type of content now, is because I can now make the money in order to have the time to do this. So, and also, if you want monthly horoscopes for every single month of 2022 and all of the specific transits and how they're going to affect you, become a patron over at my Patreon. Support the channel as well. If you just want to know specifically what it's going to be like for you, book a reading with me. I am a consulting astrologer. I love doing consultation work. Yeah, consulting work. Yeah, consultation work. I truly love talking to people and helping people through life and giving them that astrological insight. And it's so, and like the beauty of astrology when it comes to your, like, I could tell you all of this stuff right now, but it doesn't matter until we compare it to your chart, until we figure out your time lords, until you figure out the story of your life, right? It's you're the main character in your movie. I'm just some guy on YouTube, but I'm also the main character in my life. But you're the main character in your life, and having astrology kind of gives you that perspective. And I think having that perspective can, just help you live your life. So, anyway, that's what 2022 has is going on. The big thing also too, in the comments, let me know what you think. I know you guys are going to let me know what you think anyway, but I really want to know what you think. What month are you the most excited for? Personally, I'm really excited for April, but also what month are you most not looking forward to? Is it August? Is it October? There's a lot of moving parts in this year, and I'm really curious to know what you guys think is going to be the best one or the worst one. So please let me know in the comments below, and I'll leave you guys with that. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching this whole video, liking it, sharing it, commenting, subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you, and I'll be seeing you next time.